Okay, it is post long cycle training, 200 reps in 20 minutes with double 18s, EMOM style. I am recovering from another bout of illness, but you know, most of the congestion is gone now, so it's a lot easier to breathe. Anyway, I'm drinking emergency. I had mentioned in that other video that I just got done, DeQuatum, who is a German blacksmith and HEMA practitioner. Okay? HEMA stands for Historical European Martial Arts. And in my estimation, most of HEMA is complete bullshit. It is, and I've said this before in my critique about thrusting swords versus big choppy swords, is that HEMA is basically how rich aristocrats fought each other for duels. And often these fights were not to the death. Okay? Usually they were to first blood. That's why they didn't wear armor. That's why they use narrow thrusting swords. Because contrary to popular belief, you can thrust someone and they don't die. I know. That's crazy. But you have to get them in a vital area in order to kill them. So, a lung, which nowadays isn't necessarily going to kill you, but back then, we could safely assume that a collapsed lung is 9 times out of 10 going to kill you. But then also being stabbed through the heart. Okay? So yeah. Versus having your arm lopped off and, you know, massively bleeding out everywhere. Or into your clavicle, which is how you would swing your sword at your opponent in the era of one-handed large choppy swords, like the Viking bits. If you don't believe me, you can look up bones and grave sites from those types of battlefields. The kind of cutting and hacking wounds that people would sustain. Those will kill you a lot quicker because it's massive blood loss and then you die. Versus being stabbed with a tiny ass rapier. Anyway, DeQuatum does real armored fighting. My problem with DeQuatum is that even in some of his older videos, he would tell you that the weapons are training weapons. They're not as heavy as historical weapons, and they're literally made of rubber. His hammer is flexible. What historical hammer is flexible? Okay, that's bullshit. What annoys me about DeQuatum is that he takes his videos with fake weapons and says that armor is super great and you're not going to be hurt if you get hit with an impact weapon through armor. Like, it might hurt you, but it's not going to do anything. He's so full of shit because historical armor, first of all, the steel quality, not as good as today's steel quality. The thickness, historical armor, not as thick. It's very thin. Okay? So even his armor is thicker than historical armor. The other part, in Buhurt, a primary win condition in Buhurt fights is pain compliance. And those guys are fighting with armor that is criticized by the HEMA people as being up to 2 times as thick as historical armor. But the primary way you win is making your opponent quit due to pain. And their favorite weapon is an axe. Okay? They use axes. Big axes and pole axes. I was at a Renaissance fair this year. I seen the Buhurt guys. They wouldn't let me fight, but I did get to handle their weapons. Okay? There was some very light sparring. Those guys would get hit with a pole axe in the right place, and they'd just like, no, game over. Okay? Because that thing weighed 7 pounds, and you had 7 pounds coming down, concentrated on a point, into your shoulder blade. What do you think that's gonna do? And these guys have heavy fucking armor. Okay? A lot of people back in those times didn't even have full armor. Full armor was for rich people. Rich people had full armor. You maybe would have, it's not a gambeson. A gambeson's the padded bit. A brigandine, okay? Like what Shadiversity wears. And that's good armor, but like, I don't know how it stacks up to plate, to be honest with you. We'll say they're equivalent. But if they were equivalent, why wouldn't the rich people wear them? So in my opinion, a brigandine is less protective than full plate armor. Meanwhile, these Buhart guys, in their full plate armor, primarily quit due to pain compliance. Have you seen a Buhart guy get knocked out through his helmet? I have. You know, they cap the maces at 1 kilo, under 2 pounds. And these people say that historical maces aren't good against armor because they use these little rinky-dink pieces of shit. Well, obviously, something that weighs 1 pound being smacked into some steel isn't going to do shit. But if I take that 5-pound mace I bought from Cult of Athena and smack you in the face with it while you got a big helmet on, your ass is on the ground. And I just don't like DeQuidem when he tries to present it as historical. If we're looking at the fight as a fight, like, it's fine. But the way that he always takes the weapon and he just smacks his opponent with a weapon that clearly isn't going to do anything, and then every fight ends in a grapple, I think is just stupid. The most recent video that I've seen from him showcased a samurai versus a knight. Okay? The knight, if I'm correct, if I'm remembering correctly, had a pole hammer. Okay? What did the samurai have? The samurai had a naginata. Okay? A naginata, which is basically a blade on a stick. And you're using that against somebody in full plate armor. Like, why? Of course you won. Of course the guy with the hammer won. To his credit, I think DeQuidem was the samurai. I just think it's dumb. Especially when samurai, like, there's, you know, these are in historical Japanese artworks. These were real weapons, okay? I've already established that they're not that heavy. This is 8 pounds, 7.5 if it's a particularly dry day. Okay? What do you think that's going to do to someone? Even in armor. This is going to cave in your armor completely. Okay? Now, if DeQuidem said, yeah, I don't use real impact weapons because it's too risky. It'd probably cave in the armor. I'd be like, yeah, all right, cool. But no, that's not what he says. He says that they're ineffective against armor. And that's what I hate. Because it's not true. It's not accurate at all. Okay? There's a reason that warhammers and pole hammers and in Japan and other less developed countries, shit like this made of wood that was really heavy was used and turned into long, portable, essentially battering rams. Like a really heavy bow staff where you can bash someone in the gut and then crack them in the head and kill them through their armor. Okay? There's a reason that shit like this existed. It was to smash the people behind the armor. So it really pisses me off when these nerds are like, oh yeah, armor is great, and swords were the best weapons ever because you could just jam the sword through the armor. It's retarded. Like, it's fucking retarded. It's so stupid. It pisses me off so much. Because these people just deny reality. Okay? And they substitute their fantasy. And it's just like, how did we go full circle? Like, when the YouTube thing started with the nerdy HEMA people, they told you what the heavy weapons were good for. Okay? And that swords weren't the be-all, end-all. And we've gone full circle back to swords being the be-all, end-all. But when you see the sport, the only sport where people are actually fighting each other and pain compliance is an actual win condition, they're generally not using swords. If they are using swords, they're using big, heavy falchions, which are basically cleavers. And those aren't historically accurate either, from what I can tell, but it gives you an idea of the kind of hefty-ass sword you would need. No, these people are using pole hammers and axes to like smash each other into submission. Okay? So yeah, it's just annoying. And even in Buhurt, something like this is illegal. They ban this because they know what it does. Okay? They know what you can do with something like this. Or like that big mace that I have. And I'm not talking about the one I got from Cult of Athena, the windlass. The 5-pound windlass mace. I'm talking about the really big 4.5 pound mace head I got from those Canadian fucks. Those rip-off piece of shit Canadians who never sent me my replacement haft, even though, because they fucked up the structure of the $350 mace I commissioned from them. Fuck those guys. Laidlaw Forge Works. It's been a while since I've told them to fuck off, but fuck you guys. You Canadian sacks of shit. Yeah, shit like that's banned in Buhurt because it's too dangerous. Because it works. Because taking a big heavy fucking club and smacking somebody in the face really does work. Armor's not gonna protect you. And it just pisses me off to see all these skinny ass nerds, or these fat ass nerds, talk about how great swords are and armor. It's retarded. It's just so stupid. And like, it's Dequatum. It's that sellsword arts guy. I can't stand that little faggot. Like even, not so much Shad. Shad gets shit on a lot because he's kind of weird. But like, I think half of the shit they say is more correct. Half, not all. But like even Scalagrim is on the thing, and Matt Easton, who is also a piece of shit, but whatever. And it's just really annoying. Because basically using weapons like this requires a hell of a lot more skill than these people like to let on. They won't acknowledge the amount of skill it takes to properly use a heavy weapon like this. They won't acknowledge the amount of conditioning it takes to use a heavy weapon like this. Or the skill. Okay? I'm holding that at the end, by the way. Okay? They won't acknowledge any of that. And it's really annoying. Because instead of just saying, hey guys, we're too weak and unskilled to use something like that. Or hey guys, that's way too dangerous to use in this video. No, they act like it doesn't work. And then armor is just so insanely beyond it that the narrow ass longsword and grappling and sticking through gaps was the main way to take out an opponent. And it's just not true. Like you take somebody in their grieved leg, right? And you get a swing on their leg. They're on the ground. They're on the ground. Okay? They're on the ground. And then you just whirl your club around, which requires not that much energy. And then you smash their face in with your big club, and they're dead. You guys ever been kicked in the leg? Have you guys ever been kicked in the leg? Like a proper leg kick? Right around the knee. You guys ever been kicked in the leg? No? Okay. That hurts. Okay? So imagine if I wind this son of a bitch up and I crack you right in the leg. You're not going to be able to move your leg quicker than I can swing the club. Armor has some weight to it. It's another thing they don't like to say. Armor does kind of restrict your ability to move quickly. Okay? And these weapons are not slow, as I've demonstrated multiple times. Shit like this is not slow. So, I crack you in the leg with this, and you're on the ground. And guess what? My armor is good enough to stop your rinky-dink sword strike. Okay? But now you have a broken leg, and I'm going to smash your face in with my giant demon club. Okay? But your sword didn't do shit to my armor. And that's why swords are a bad weapon to use against armor, and I really don't care what any of these fucking nerds say. You're not going to take me down. You're not going to take most people down. You're 150 pounds. If you're lucky. It's like modern day people judge people from the past whose entire lives was built around training and conditioning. And I'm not saying that I'm on the level of those people who fought all day and trained all day. I'm not, okay? But I'm a hell of a lot closer to it than these nerds. Like Sellsword Arts and Dequatum and certainly like Scalagrim and Matt Easton. Okay? And I'm telling these guys that these heavy weapons are not fantasy. They are legitimately real. Stop judging everybody by your exceptionally low standards. It pisses me off. And stop overhyping how good your armor is, in the case of Dequatum, who does make his own armor. He's a very skilled craftsman. I'm not saying anything negative about Dequatum, other than I completely disagree with the premise of his combat videos. But the steel quality is better. Your armor is literally thicker than most historical examples, and you use fake weapons most of the time, unless it's a sword, because we all know that a sword's not getting through steel armor. Okay? It just pisses me off. When I saw that Samurai versus Knight video the other day, I guess it's been about 2 weeks now. I think it's been a week or two. But when I saw it the other day, it really just pissed me off. And then I was swinging this around recently, and I was like, you know what? I gotta make a video on that. But it just annoys me because, yeah, like, these are not, fantasy weapons. These are real weapons. And the thing about this Kanabo in particular is that compared to an historical Kanabo, the handle isn't even as long, which means the leverage I get on this isn't as good as what I could get on a real historical Kanabo. Historically, the handle on this should be up to about here, okay? So I should have about another 8 inches of handle, and that would give me way more leverage. Now, because it is basically just a barrel of wood, it's a barrel, they call it a barrel, okay? It's not carved out of a singular piece of wood, it's laminated. But anyway, you can't just choke up on it like that, and that's why I said in the demo video I did last year, in a one-on-one fight, this is mostly a heavy staff club, okay? You're thrusting, you're getting short smacks in, you only load up when you really have an opening. Not that it's slow, but one-on-one combat is different, okay? Because when you've got multiple people, you need to keep the space around you protected or defended, however you want to call it. So you got to keep the weapon in motion. But in one-on-one, you don't need to do that as much because it's just one-on-one. So you can get in close and you can jab them in the face and hit them, and then you can back it off and then clap them upside the head. So yeah, difference in fighting multiple people versus one. When there's multiple people, you're still probably going to lose. But keeping your weapon in motion makes it a lot less likely that they'll engage. Okay, that's why big swords were used, by the way. They were not used by people who charged into pike formations. They were used by people who were bodyguards, essentially, or who were guarding a particular point. Because you could put one guy on a key point, he's got a big-ass sword, and the people that he's going against very likely not to have any armor at all, which means one swipe of that sword is going to fuck your day up. It'll probably kill you, because it's going to take an arm off, or a head, or cut your throat. You're just not going to get close. That's why those swords were like they were. Great swords. The idea that you would charge into a pike formation is retarded. It just is. I don't know why they came up with that idea. It's retarded. And it's nice, this is a side note, but it's nice to see more and more people saying that, Zweihander type swords were more so used by individuals who were on guard duty, essentially, because I've been saying that for years. And the idea that you would charge into pike formation and sweep the pikes aside is idiotic fantasy. But in their minds, they're like, oh, these swords aren't wieldable, aside from doing something like that. But then more people got their hands on the swords, and they're like, oh, shit, you can actually keep these going, like, perpetually, almost. See what I mean? Like, it's retarded. The HEMA people are mental midgets. They're nerds. They get into a thing, and they're like, oh, yeah, this is our thing, and we're totally right. And then they don't accept any criticism or any critique at all, and it kind of just becomes a masturbatory exercise. And I just don't like them. But yeah, anyway, heavy medieval weapons did exist, and they're quite wieldable. And this is certainly not the most balanced example of one. This is a giant club, a giant studded club that weighs about 8 pounds, and some Kanabo were bigger. In fact, when I bought this 2.5 years ago, you could get one from Cult of Athena that weighed about 15 pounds from Volcanics, but they stopped selling it because, I mean, all the reviews were shit. It apparently wasn't very durable, even though it was supposedly made out of oak, and I guess it smelled really bad. There was like 3 reviews on that thing that said it smelled really bad. That's why I ended up going with this one, because it was the highest reviewed Kanabo. They had 3, 2 from Volcanics, and then this one from Cult of Athena themselves, or whoever their manufacturer is, but it's in-house, and they still sell this one. So this one kicks ass. I beat the shit out of it, and it only has a couple of notches in it, really. There's a sword strike on it somewhere that kind of cut into it a little bit. Maybe it was an axe. I don't remember. But yeah, it's very durable, so I would get this one. There is that one website that sells custom, but I honestly think it's overpriced for what it is. This is a good enough Kanabo for most people. But yeah, anyway, that's that. I don't like HEMA people. They're very much an echo chamber.